Welcome back, everyone, to Ein Sof Learning for another weekly dose of Torah, which our soul yearns for every time that we're not learning it. We know that the angel of death can get you when you're not learning Torah. Whenever your consciousness is not attached in a way of cleaving to the light. Whenever you're not attached to the light, you're vulnerable. So it's particularly during those moments that we're learning Torah that the light of God, literally, it is infused in your veins. And that's the level of consciousness that we're hoping to achieve on a default state, is to always be one with the light. Wherever we go, whatever we think, whatever we say, whatever we do, it's to fulfill the will of the Creator through us. That we be a channel for the light of God to reach others. But for that, we need to prepare our vessels. Because we're receivers. Sometimes selfish receivers. I'm not going to treat you like a kid. Most of the time, we're selfish receivers. And that's the essence of evil. So we have to learn how to transform our desire to receive the light of God selfishly into a desire to receive the light for the sake of giving God the pleasure of bestowing it to us. And also the way we do that is by doing the mitzvot, by gamilut chasadim, and Torah study. So this week's Torah portion is miketz. Miketz literally means at the end. At the end of the 2 years that have passed since last week's Torah portion, insofar as the storyline is concerned, the Parasha begins with Pharaoh telling us his dream. Well, the Torah tells us Pharaoh's dream. And the interesting thing is that just a few verses later, the Torah repeats Pharaoh's dream all over again with all of its details as he starts to relay it to Yosef. Pharaoh wants to get the dream interpreted. So he repeats the entire dream to Yosef. But the Torah didn't need to include that. There were many dreams in the last few parashas. Whether it was Yosef's dream that there were his brothers and his parents were bowing down to him, which was in last week's Torah portion. Whether it was the cupbearer and the butcher in the prison with Yosef, their dream was only recounted once, not twice. Yaakov's dream with the ladder and the angels coming up and down, that was only mentioned once. So why is Pharaoh's dream repeated 2 times? Once in the first part of the portion, and then only a few verses later, the Torah repeats it all over again in all of its detail. I think it's a fair question, right? So for that, we have to go and really see what this dream was about. So Pharaoh was dreaming that he was standing over the Nile River. And he saw a bunch of cows coming out of the Nile. First, a patch of 7 cows. They were healthy, they were beautiful. And then 7 more cows come out, but they were unhealthy and they were pretty ugly. Then, to his surprise, the ugly cows eat the beautiful cows. The unhealthy cows prevail over the healthy cows. Then he wakes up from his dream, goes back to bed, and he has another dream. This time with sheaths of wheat. 7 healthy sheaths of wheat come out from the stalk, from the river, I believe it was. And then 7 more come out, which are not healthy, which are like all dry or whatever it is. And the unhealthy wheat eats the healthy wheat, just like in the first dream. And we learn later on that Yosef says, these 2 dreams are one. They're the same dream. So why then did he have 2 dreams of the same message? Well, it was God's way of expressing the urgency of the meaning, which we're going to get to soon, of what's about to happen. And what was about to happen? The exile. The exile of Egypt. What marks the beginning of the Egyptian exile? It is the moment that the 11 brothers of Yosef sell him into slavery. So Pharaoh has this dream, and he wants to have the dream interpreted. And one of the officers that he has, which once was in the prison with Yosef, he was the one in the prison who had the dream, and Yosef helped him get out. And he got out, but here he is talking to Pharaoh. He's telling him, there's this slave, there's a Hebrew slave in the prison who interpreted my dream for me. Perhaps he can interpret your dream. That's what he told Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said, huh? A Hebrew slave? Interpreting my dreams? I have to check it out. So he goes and he releases Yosef from prison. And to his surprise, Yosef gives him the interpretation that he was looking for. The truth is, all of the people around him, he had sorcerers, he had magicians, he had people who knew astrology that were interpreting his dream. But he didn't like their interpretations because he felt that there was something missing, something that they were not catching. You know, people think that Pharaoh was a totally unaware person. He was not totally unaware. He knew that there were spiritual realities. He understood the battle between good and evil. He knew that there were impure forces and the forces of holiness that exist in this world. But what he didn't know, which is what makes him one of the most stupidest people, is that there is an underlying unity above all of what we see, all of the separation, all of this war, good against evil and good versus bad, and everything that we're seeing, impurity versus holiness. There is an underlying unity to all of the different parts of the creation. But they exist above the creation, so to speak, in a place above, in a world level of consciousness, of unity. Of course, whenever we say above, it doesn't mean that it's physically in the direction of up. God is not above. I laugh sometimes when I see people. They say God is above, God is above. God is everywhere. God is everywhere. And most importantly, how are you going to access Him? It's through going inside. If you think God is above, God is outside, you're never going to find Him. It's the moment that you turn your finger 180 degrees to yourself, you realize that you are preventing yourself from receiving the light, which exists within you. The light exists within you. And there are certain blockages that are standing in the way between us and our true self. Those are what the klipot are. And as we'll see, the dream that Pharaoh had was actually a prophecy about the impending exile of Egypt, in which the forces of impurity will devour the forces of holiness, as per the symbolism in the dream. The 7 unhealthy cows were eating the 7 healthy cows. That is a metaphor for the klipot overpowering kedusha. How did the kedusha become embedded within the klipot? How did the forces of holiness get trapped in the impurity in the first place? Because we know that the nation of Israel was sent into exile to redeem the sparks that were there. Some people make the mistake in thinking that the nation of Israel are the sparks that are trapped. Not entirely. I mean, in a certain sense, yes. In a certain sense, yes. Because Adam Harishon committed a great big sin in the Garden of Eden. And the consequence of that is felt even to this day. And as we'll see in the story of Egypt with the exile, the forces of holiness were embedded into the midst of the klipot as a consequence of the sin of Adam in the Garden of Eden. And for that reason, Israel was sent into Egypt on a mission to redeem the sparks that are held captive by the forces of impurity. Why do we call them forces? Just like in a war, the forces, the people, the soldiers. Because that's exactly the type of imagery that we're offered by the Torah. We're offered a warlike imagery, where there are forces, literal forces, soldiers on the ground that are clashing over the good and the bad, either slavery or freedom. Egypt represents that place, that consciousness, where a person is trapped, they're enslaved to certain impurities that are holding them back, certain evil inclinations that are possessing their mind and causing them to act in self-motivated interests. That is the essence of evil. That's the desire to receive the pleasures and the fulfillments of the world for the sake of satisfying yourself, and that's the most selfish thing to do. But I'm not going to sit here and sound like I'm all perfect and I don't do that myself. We all do. We can't kid ourselves. If you want to lie to others, lie to others. But don't lie to yourself. At least you should know for yourself where you're at. And the way you can measure where you're standing is whether or not you recognize, first of all, that there are two voices in your mind, not one. If you understand that there are two voices speaking and fighting over control of your actions in this world, then you're really in the war. You are awake and you are aware and you're fighting. You're a true soldier. But there are many who don't even recognize this reality. And those are the captives. The captives are those forces of holiness that are embedded so deeply into the forces of the klipot, into the midst of the impurities, that they don't even know that they are captives. The same way that we see in Gaza right now. Both the Jews that were kidnapped from Israel and the Palestinians themselves who are in Gaza are being held captive by the forces of impurity. The same way that we see that in the physical world, we know that the root is in the spiritual worlds. And what's happening on the ground physically is actually a reflection or a consequence. Actually, I like to use the word a shadow. It is a shadow or a projection of what's happening in the spiritual worlds, which is up here. The war is within. I want to make this the central theme of these videos, because Torah came to teach one thing. The answer for all of the problems, for all of the unfortunate things that we see in the world, for all of the famine, for all of the destruction, for all of the death, the remedy for all of this exists inside you, not outside. And that's one of the biggest secrets that Kabbalah has come to really teach to the world, that we may understand this deep and profound message. The answers, the light, God, is not outside. It's inside. You were born with everything that you need in order to fulfill your tikkun. The only thing that's keeping you back is the forces of klipot, which you were born into this world. This world is the world of klipah. So this is the journey. You're sent into exile, as we are born into this world of exile. And you are tasked with freeing yourself from captivity, which means fighting the Yetzer Hara until the force of goodness within you beams forward and shines to the world. Then you can help other people become free. But you cannot free other people if you do not know how to free yourself. So, the Torah is coming to hint for us a metaphor for our daily life. The Egyptian exile is not a history book. It's not about the past. It is an ongoing reality of our everyday experience. Any person who you see, they're addicted to their phone. They're addicted to their money. They're addicted to attention. Or just thinking about themselves. These are all different forms of diseases. And another quick way of framing this concept through the tree of life is understanding that there are 10 Sefirot, but the lower 7 Sefirot are what comprise the creation. The lower 7 Sefirot are included within Binah. Binah is corresponding to the world of Bria, the world of creation, which is consisting of 7 lower Sefirot, Chesed, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, Malchut. These 7 Sefirot are hinted to by the 7 cows, the 7 good cows, or the 7 healthy stalks of wheat that were in Pharaoh's dream. But we know that Hashem made this world Zeh le'umat Zeh, which means this opposite this. It's a wording from Kohelet, from Ecclesiastes, that says everything that exists on the side of holiness also exists on the side of impurity. So the same way that there are 10 Sefirot of holiness, there are 10 Sefirot of impurity. That's why there were not only just 7 cows of good, but there were also 7 cows of impurity. And the 7 cows of impurity devoured the 7 good cows. That's a metaphor for the 7 lower Sefirot of the side of impurity, overpowering the side of holiness, which is the reality of exile. In exile, the forces of impurity just naturally, they have a greater advantage over the holiness, and that's a consequence of the sin of Adam. But nevertheless, we're tasked. We're on a mission to redeem those sparks. And once enough Jews that are out in the world, that's why we were exiled to the 70 nations. We've experienced every single culture. We've experienced persecution everywhere. Because it is specifically through toiling in the exile, and in some cases suffering through slavery, that we redeem these sparks, that we absorb the sparks that are embedded within the world around us, make them part of ourself. And since the Jew is a piece of God, therefore we've just redeemed those sparks. The moment you eat food and you say a blessing over it, could be that there are sparks in that food, and you are redeeming those sparks, making them part of yourself, and therefore you've just elevated those sparks from the level of it being trapped in the food to now it's part of you. But you got to make sure that you are redeemed. So whenever you are trapped, absorbing these sparks doesn't do much other than the point in your life that you become holy. When you become holy, every part of you, everything you've ever eaten, everything you've ever said, thought, done, it becomes elevated with you. All of the prayers that you made in the past that you did not have kavanah, all it takes is one prayer that has kavanah, and you elevate all of the prayers to that same level. You have to penetrate a hole into the spiritual worlds through your consciousness. You can toil in the physical world all you want, but if your consciousness is not aligned with the divine, then you were toiling in vain. Because a prayer without proper kavanah is like a body without a soul. You can do all of the mitzvot, you can do all of the good deeds, but if the intention is absent, it is as good as nothing. However, you should still do it, even if you're selfish, meaning the mitzvot and the good deeds. Why? And Torah study. Why? Because there's a chance that it will motivate you, that eventually you will learn to engage in these activities with pure intentions, for the sake of giving God the opportunity to dwell in this world. He created the system, He created the world, and He made it be this way, that we have to invite Him down to this world. It is through the awakening of the desire to receive within the vessel that the light becomes revealed, and it is not ever imposed from above. God doesn't impose Himself into the creation, He waits for an invite. And that's our job, to make space, because right now we're full of ourselves, so there's no space. It's an interesting wording. We're full of ourselves. So we have to take ourselves out of the picture, bring God into the picture, and align our will with His will, thus becoming a channel for the light of God in this world to bring back all of the sparks from captivity and bring the universal redemption for all of the worlds, for all of the nations, to live in peace, harmony, and unity towards a unified goal of just continuing to learn, grow, and work the garden as Adam was commanded before he committed the sin. That was his only mitzvah, to work the garden. This world, this creation is a garden. We are living in the Garden of Eden, but we just don't see it. We have fallen. There are those who are still growing to develop their vessel so that the light that's inside of them can shine more and more. Because the light can only shine within a vessel that has space. So according to how much space you make, that's how much light gets revealed in it. Now, remember, when we're seeing light, we're talking about consciousness. It might be sometimes hard for people to understand that. But that's what Kabbalah and Judaism is here to teach. So we have to accustom ourselves to these words, these concepts, and get a good feeling of what they mean to us on a personal level. Some people have depression in the world. That is a very concealed level of light, because it's just darkness. It's a state of consciousness, so it is light, but it's just extremely, you can't see it. All darkness is the potential for light. The more evil someone or something is, that's how good and how bright it could shine. And the same thing goes the other way around. The holier a person is, the greater the weight of their sins. So it goes both ways. If a person grows on the side of holiness, their other side grows with them. It doesn't mean that it's active all the time. But if, God forbid, a tzaddik falls into sin, the damage caused there is extremely, extremely high. That's why it's so much more important now, more than ever before, to engage in learning Jewish mysticism. And I'm talking about really hardcore, going at it. Talmud Eser Sefirot. We need to learn the teaching of the 10 luminous emanations. This is the way out. I want to make this very clear. This is not a commentary on the Torah. This is not an opinion by a rabbi. This is raw Kabbalah, teaching you how to redeem yourself from the forces of klipot that are holding you captive. That's why we were created. That's why the Torah was given, to bring redemption to the world. And this is it. And if we ourselves as Jews don't understand this, then that's the unfortunate consequence of the exile, that we've lost touch. We've lost touch with the light. This is the light. But not just by reading it. It's not a matter of reading. First, it starts conceptual. So you have to read and you have to imagine and think to yourself how it relates to my life. But as you grow and as you advance with a teacher, you start to get a feeling for what these concepts mean to you. And not just in a physical way, but in an emotional way, intellectual way, but in an actual spiritual experience that exists within you. And you'll start to become familiar with the energies. And you understand, the light of Chokhmah, the light of Chasadim. I'm building this part of the vessel, that part of the vessel. For what? Why are we building a vessel? To receive light. But it has to be a kosher vessel, meaning a holy endeavor of receiving for the sake of sharing. And that's what the Jewish people were sent here to do. We could keep talking about the Parasha, but I thought to keep this one a little bit short, just to get this message across. That the exile of Egypt has never stopped. We're still inside of it. It is in the darkest of places that the brightest light is found. And I'm not saying that to motivate you for anything. That's just a fact. And so we have to go inside, face our darkness, face our evil inclination, and overpower it. You show him who's boss. All these years he's been showing you who's boss. You show him who's boss. You tell him to sit, he sits. You tell him to stop talking, he stops talking. A person can reach that level of control over their animal. I mean, you can do it with your dog, right? You can train your dog to sit whenever you say sit, to bark when you say bark, to stop barking when you say stop barking. So we have to train the animal within us the same way. That doesn't mean we abuse it, but we have to train it. We have to teach it. Sometimes with compassion, sometimes with more harshness. That's all part of the system. Knowing when to use and express which energy. Whether I'm going to express the kindness or withhold the kindness. And that's the same way that we deal with others. We deal with others through a lens of kindness. But there are also certain circumstances where we understand that we need to withhold the kindness. It doesn't mean that we stop being kind. It means we stop expressing the kindness. It's like when God punishes. When God punishes people, He doesn't hate them. He just withholds His love. He still loves, but He doesn't want them to see it because He loves them so much that He's giving them pain so that way they can come to change. He loves them so much that He's not going to let them just keep making mistakes and go off in their own direction. No, He's going to bring them pain or certain circumstances that will hopefully wake them up that they may return. That's the mercy of God. 13 attributes of mercy. So may we merit to have success in our journey against the forces of impurity. But remembering that the way we win is not with darkness, it's by shining more light. And we were sent on a mission into the exile to redeem those sparks, make them part of ourselves, and then come out of Egypt. And when we come out of Egypt, then we reach Mount Sinai, as is going to happen in a few more parashiot. We're revealed, Yud-Kei Vav-Kei, and we're redeemed. That's the whole journey from beginning to end. It's the development of how Adam reaches completion. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please share with your friends, your family. Comment your questions, and I will be happy to respond in the comment section. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next video.